Welcome back to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast. I'm Dale Corpus, a senior transition specialist and real estate expert, and I help families navigate the often overwhelming process of selling a senior's home while transitioning them into the right living environment. One of the biggest challenges families face when transitioning a loved one into senior care isn't just choosing the right place, it's figuring out how to pay for it. Senior care can be expensive, and without a solid plan, families can end up spending their life savings or making tough financial decisions under pressure. That's exactly why I have Katie Perez with me today. Katie is a long term care insurance specialist who helps families plan ahead so they're not caught off guard by senior care costs. Today, we're diving into one, why long term care insurance matters and how it works. Two, who should get long term care insurance and when's the best time to buy. Three, common myths and mistakes people make when planning for senior care. And four, how long term care insurance ties into senior transitions and real estate, and much more. If you're wondering how to plan ahead for yourself or a loved one, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
And so we are back, and I'm so excited to have Katie Perez with me on this episode. She's a friend of mine, and she's also a long-term care specialist, which is really important in the senior care world. Katie, how are you? Welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited, Dale.
So, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you even get into long-term care insurance?
There's a very personal question, a story that I'll share with you. Back in 2002, my husband, who's a very athletic, very healthy, and very conscious individual, had a stroke. It was so unexpected. If you ever met him back in the day, you wouldn't think that there was anything physically wrong with him. So when he had his stroke, it was a shock and it changed our life. I had to understand the difference between a stroke and a heart attack. It was that basic. I had to understand what his rights were as a patient and what my rights were as a caregiver, and how I could better advocate for him. And that experience has made long-term care even more personal for me because we actually went through it. And during that time, he was only 54 years old. So he was very young.
Yeah.
It changed our life. Yep.
Wow. So, for those that don't know, what exactly is long-term care insurance and why is it important?
So by definition, long-term care is when an individual is diagnosed by a licensed physician to be unable to do 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living for more than 90 days. And those activities of daily living are the ones that we take for granted, like eating, bathing, continence, toileting, clothing, dressing up, moving from chair to bed or bed to chair. Things that we don't even think twice of doing. So if you can't do 2 out of those activities of daily living for more than 90 days, then you're eligible for long-term care.
Okay. Well, who should consider getting long-term care insurance? And is there even an ideal age to purchase it?
Mm-hmm. So, when you're young, you don't think of needing long-term care. You don't think of death, right? Because when you're young, you're indestructible, right? You're at the prime of your growth.
Right.
So why would you even think about it? So what I tell my clients is don't think of just the long-term care. Think of how you can better prepare yourself and financially for what's surprises life might throw your way. And as far
Mhm.
as age is concerned, you'll notice that there's nowhere in the definition that age was mentioned to qualify for long-term care. So anybody could need it. I have a friend whose son, very very healthy young college student, had a freak accident in the gym, and because of
Mhm.
that, it left him paralyzed from the waist down. So
Oh, wow.
that transition period from being a healthy young man to adjusting to the changes life threw his way, right? He would have been eligible for long-term care. And he's only in his early 20s. So there's really no
Wow.
age requirement or age advisable for one to secure a long-term care coverage for an individual.
I mean, even in your own clientele that you work with, how young is the youngest person that, you help get long-term care insurance out of curiosity?
Well, the youngest you could qualify, there is a minimum age to qualify for
Oh,
long-term care, and that's 18 years old. So, for example, my
okay.
daughter, I secured her a life insurance that has what we call living benefits these days, but I got it for her when she
Okay.
wasn't 18 years old yet. So now that she's older than 18, I have to make the changes necessary so that I can make sure that she has some sort of long-term care living benefit if that happens.
Okay, got it. What's the biggest misconception people have about long-term care insurance?
There's quite a few, but I'll tell you what bothers me the most is
Okay.
people think that they will never need it because they're healthy. I've actually had a client who was talked out of securing some kind of a long-term care protection for himself at the age of 72 because
Mhm.
his financial advisor pointed out that he's healthy and he would never need it. So that's what bothers me.
Mm, got it. Is there any other, like, outside of that one, can you name even another one?
Another situation where
Yeah. Or just another misconception about long-term care insurance?
the age I mentioned that
Okay.
earlier, and another one
So
just to come
18 years old minimum. I didn't even know that, so thank you for telling me that.
oh, yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people don't. That's why I think this video, this YouTube channel that you're doing, it's a really great service to the public. It helps us spread the word faster and have a wider reach. But to add another, misconception, I would say
Yeah,
is that health insurance or Medicare will cover it. That's not the case.
got it. Okay, good to know.
Mhm.
Um, so, like, let's talk about just what long-term care insurance actually covers. Does it in does it cover things like home care, assisted living, nursing homes?
Yes, it does.
All of the above?
Yes,
Mhm.
it does.
Okay.
So when you or a family member has been determined to qualify for long-term care, there's actually a health directive, or not the health directive, a plan in place together with a physician as to what will be needed. So, um, speaking from my own experience, when my husband had a stroke, we had to have a physical therapist, an occupational therapist,
Mhm.
and a speech therapist. And he was recommended to have some kind of a care assistance because he would slip off a chair if he were left by his own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So long-term care could cover any of that. And in some cases, if it's a home care service that the family determines is suitable for their needs and their circumstances, there's also what home care services call respite assistance. So like
Okay.
if the caregiver, which happens to be most of the time is the spouse of the patient, um, they also determine that, oh, the spouse, the caregiver, the more permanent caregiver could need a break, a few hours of rest, just to recharge. And that could be part of the long-term care plan too.
Okay. I'm gonna go back to something you said earlier on. You talked about the activities of daily living.
Mhm.
also known as ADLs. So who determines if they're not able to perform, a certain number of these ADLs? Is that something that they have to go get? They have to go to a special place to get that, diagnosed, or how does that work?
It's a physician. Their attending physician would be making that determination.
Got it. And then how does long-term care insurance help families afford care without wiping out their savings? And is there even a limit to how much uh, long-term care insurance they have?
You see, the thing with long-term care is that we don't know how long we're going to need it. We don't even know if we're actually going to need it, right? That's because we don't have a way of telling what the future has in store for us. So the best we can do is prepare the best that we can. So if that means getting a coverage that will secure your long-term care for X number of years, that's X number of years that your family doesn't have to think outside the box and figure out what do we do next, right? It allows them the chance to focus on the care that's needed and the lifestyle transitions that the family is going through, which is more crucial than later on, right? So
Got it.
I think that's a thing. Now, there are families that say, well, we can self-fund it because they've set aside money, they've thought about these things. And, if I say to them, that's great, kudos for you. And congratulations for being able to confidently say that you can self-fund it. There's nothing wrong with that either. But what people often overlook is when you self-fund it, it's like, when you're young, right? We're accumulating wealth,
Yeah.
right? And when we're accumulating wealth, what's the number one advice? Diversify, right?
Okay.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's when you're accumulating wealth. Well, the same thing can be thought of for retirement. What's important when you're
Okay.
retired, right? You have your portfolio for your retirement. You've worked your whole life to build that. And again, like what I said, congratulations to those who did that. Now, when you're retired, there's certain things that you need to make sure you're securing. One is you want to make sure you're protecting your principal. You have income
Hmm.
in, you're protecting your
Hmm.
legacy, and you're providing something for long-term care. So
Hmm.
if you did not have some kind of a long-term care insurance, let's say, you're going
Hmm.
to tap into your principal, right? So what's going to happen to
Hmm.
that ability of your retirement portfolio to generate the income that you and your spouse needs? Or what if the need for long-term care comes up when the market is down? So not only did you lose money from the loss because the market is down, but you've also
Hmm.
deprived yourself and your spouse that retirement income that portion should have generated for you. So there's a lot of
I get it.
ways, right, that long-term care could come into benefit for a family.
Um, can you walk us through how long-term care insurance works? How does someone actually use their policy when they need care?
Well, like what we said, it takes a physician's statement to make that determination, right?
Okay.
So when the family or when the patient has long-term care, it's just a matter of making a call to their carrier and indicating or sharing the letter from their physician saying that they need long-term care and they qualify for it. Now
Okay.
every carrier might have some differences as to how they make that determination as to how they calculate the benefits. There's long-term cares that are specific. They say, oh, you can get up to 2% of your death benefit. That's what we call accelerating the death benefit. And then there's some
Okay.
that might have a different calculation for it. So every carrier is different.
Okay. Is there a waiting period though? I mean, does it kick in right away when they need it after their physician says, they meet the qualifications for the amount of ADLs they can't do? So does the insurance kick in right away?
Well, again, I like to take you back to the definition, right? Inability to do 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living for more than 90 days. So the common waiting period is that 90 days,
Got it.
right? And that's not such a bad thing either. That's not such a bad requirement because most of the time, if you're in the hospital, your insurance would cover your stay in the hospital, right? Or Medicare will cover your first 20 days in the hospital, and anything beyond 20 days up to day 99 would be there's a copayment, right? So, but um later on, maybe we can talk about the different um parts of what determines the cost of long-term care because that elimination period is a criteria for determining that.
Okay, got it. And then just want to just, I know that uh we um if somebody doesn't have long-term care insurance, I know one of their options is obviously to self-fund everything. Is there anything else that people could do if they don't have long-term care insurance? Are there any other options just than using their own cash?
Well, there are state and federally funded programs like in California, Medi-Cal or
Okay.
Medicaid, but there are requirements. There's what you call there's income restrictions and asset restrictions. So what that means
Hmm.
is if the individual is not is earning less than the state's designated income restriction or doesn't have assets or the assets they have is less than the state um, limit,
Hmm.
then they could apply for that. Now there is a look back period, and I believe for the federal, they do a 5-year look back. So they look at what your
Okay.
income was or what you've declared your assets to be going 5 years back.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, let's I'm gonna kind of just switch questions to kind of people like avoiding common mistakes in long-term care. What's the biggest mistake people make when it comes to long-term care planning?
They don't think that they'll ever need it.
Got it.
They think that there's
And then
go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
And no, I think the most common mistake there is that, oh, we've got family that will take care of us. We've got kids who will take care of us.
Mm. Got it. Got it. Can we talk about let's talk about Medicare a little bit. I mean, what does Medicare actually cover then?
I'm not a Medicare specialist, so I don't think I'm in a position to address that question
Mhm.
accurately.
But it doesn't cover long-term care. Is that correct?
Yes, it does not cover long-term care, that's for sure.
Okay. And then speak also wanted to ask about Medicaid. I mean, what's the difference between Medicaid and long-term care insurance? And when does Medicaid come into play?
Well, Medicaid is limited. Like what I said, it's a federally or state-funded program that has income and asset restrictions. So if, for example, you live in the San Francisco Bay Area where we are and you own a home,
Right.
just by virtue of how real estate is in our area, chances are you're not going to
Yep.
qualify for Medicare or Medi-Cal, right?
Right.
Medicare, I'm sorry, long-term care is, I think, for people who want to take control of their future. They want to be able to make sure that they're not relying on assistance. So I think that's the primary
Got it.
difference between the two.
Got it. What happens if someone wants long-term care insurance, but they're already in poor health? Are there even alternative options?
Oh, there are. And a lot of people think that, oh, I'm older, right? Or you know, older is relative, right? Because I'm older than
Right.
you, but you're older than your kids, right? So what's older,
Right.
right? Um, but for people who are up there, let's say or let's just say that they have some pre-existing condition and it becomes a challenge to get them qualified for long-term care or
Okay.
any life insurance product for that matter. There are other options that we can look into. Um, there's
Okay.
an annuity product that offers, it's not called long-term care, it's called activities of daily living benefit, but the requirements are the
Okay.
same thing, the inability to do 2 activities of daily living for more than 90 days.
Okay.
Mhm.
Got it. Um, and how does having long-term care insurance affect a family's decision to sell a home to fund senior care?
It doesn't get in the way, but
It's another option, right?
it's
Yeah.
another option, and I mean, we may not see that much, downturn in values in Northern California,
Right.
like, maybe other parts of the country, but it could happen, and like what I said, what if you're relying on your real estate asset to fund your long-term care? And what if the real estate market is down when you need it? So you're selling
Yeah.
at a
Mm.
loss.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, I know a lot of families wait until there's a crisis
Mhm,
before making a move on something like this, like
mhm,
long-term care.
mhm.
So why is it so important to plan ahead?
Because you don't want to wait at the last minute, because your family needs and would like to would prefer taking care of you than worrying about the logistics of how are we going to finance mom and dad's long-term care needs, right? Because
Mhm.
without us realizing it, even those around us who love us, somebody will step up, right? But for somebody to step up, that means that they're changing their lifestyle to adjust the changes in your lifestyle now, in your life situation, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, I talk about being a sandwich generation where we're caring or looking after our aging parents while at the same time raising our own family, right? Well, what if this whole situation happens when your child has still young children to look after? Are they going to tell their young children to slow down when you're growing up because I have to take care of grandma and grandma, right? So
Right.
that's a challenge.
Right. Right. Um, and how, I mean, for folks that are resistant to even think about, um, moving into a senior living community and they want to age in place it at home,
Mhm.
how does long-term care insurance help with that?
Well, they can that they could be helped by being able to hire a professional caregiver instead of relying on your
Okay.
children or your spouse. Like what I said, I mean, they will step up because they love you. There's no, there always will be somebody who will step up. But like what I said, that means that they're putting their life on hold for you. When if you have long-term care, you can hire somebody whose job is to take care of somebody in need and is trained to take care of somebody in need, right? So that way your family doesn't have to disrupt their life and they can just continue focusing on giving you the care, love, and attention that you need.
Okay. Um, I wanted to ask you kind of just a general question about long-term care insurance, like the premiums. Is it fair to say for somebody younger that it's a lot lower than for someone that's older applying for it? That would be a lot more expensive. How is that determined?
I mean, long-term care is still life insurance. It's a kind of life
Yeah.
insurance, right? And just like life insurance, if you're young, if you're healthy, not only is it more affordable, but you have a better chance of getting covered,
Okay.
right? So the younger you are, the better it is. But like what we said, when
Mhm.
you're young, you don't think of needing long-term care. You don't think of death, right? So there are other products out there that might be more suitable for your concern at the moment, but still give you that possibility to use it for long-term care should you need it in the future.
Okay. If you could give every adult child one piece of advice about planning for their parents' care, what would it be?
Be realistic with what you're willing to give up in your life.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. And yeah, did you want to expand on that more?
I do. We always say, "Oh, don't worry, don't worry. I'll take care of everything should you need this." But you don't even know what everything is,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
be realistic in setting, what can you do for them? Can they move in with you? Do you have an ADU unit? Um, do you live nearby that you can check in on them on a daily basis? Because,
Mhm.
um, like what I said, everybody still has their life to move on to live, right? And it doesn't stop. It
Right.
doesn't go on pause. It doesn't even slow down. So be realistic with that.
Mhm. If long-term care insurance was a superhero, what would its superpower be?
The ability to give people time. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I kind of touched in on this one earlier. When the need for long-term care arises, right? It's a shocker for everyone. Everyone's like kind of in limbo and confused. Mom and dad, thank goodness you have a lot of assets. You built up your retirement. That's great. But now let's figure out which of your assets do we sell first? Do we sell the house? Do we sell the stocks? Do we cash in on your 401k, right? What do we do? Right? How do we understand what's going on in the market? What are the tax implications if we were to sell any of those assets? Right? But if
Yep.
you have long-term care, it allows your family to not have to worry about that and give you the time that you need for everybody in the family to get adjusted to the new circumstances. And then once the dust settles, then the family is like, okay, now we know we've got a rhythm going. We know what mom or dad needs. We know what changes in our lifestyle we're able to do. Now let's look at if their need is longer than what their policy can guarantee them. Let's look
Mhm.
at what they have and figure out what our next game plan will be, what our next strategy will be, right? So I think that would be the superpower of long-term care.
No, I love that answer. I love that. Here's uh here's my last question. Is there anything I didn't ask you yet that I should have asked?
You should have asked. Um, I think you've touched on a lot of things, but I wanted to touch on something about uh when people look at their options out there because people will
Mhm.
shop,
Okay.
right? So if you don't mind, let's touch on that, right? Because you and I, we always encourage our clients to go out and shop, look around, check out, know the market, right? We always advise them to do that.
Right.
It doesn't change for long-term care.
Right.
But what I will always tell my clients is one, understand the value, not just the cost. And there's a difference, right? The value is what you're getting. The cost is what you pay every month, right? And
Mhm.
make sure that when you're determining, you're comparing apples to apples. You asked me about the
Mhm.
elimination period earlier, right? And I said that 90 days is the most common elimination period for a plan. It doesn't mean just because it's
Mhm.
common that you're limited to 90 days. There are plans where you can customize it. Say you want it to be 60 days, right? Or
Mhm.
you want to make it longer. Fine, right? Of course, that's going to have an impact on what your premium payment is going to be. The benefit period is another thing. Do you want to be covered for 5 years? Do you want to be covered for 7 years? Do you want to be covered for 10 years? That's going to make a difference on your premium.
Mhm.
So understand what you're getting when you're comparing options. Is it taxable? Is it not taxable? Can you put qualified funds? Can you not put qualified funds? Because that's another thing, right? What if it gets to the point where it's too expensive for them? Well, then let's look at other sources of funds to cover that.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's making sure that you're comparing, like what I said, apples to apples.
Got it. Wow, Katie, this has been such a valuable conversation. Thank you, Katie, for breaking down long-term care insurance and showing us why it's so important for families to plan ahead. Before we wrap up, how can families reach out to you if they have questions or want to explore their long-term care insurance options?
Sure. They can send me an email. My email is
Okay.
KTPEREZWFG@gmail.com.
Okay.
Mhm.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and for those of you that are watching the YouTube version of this, I'll put that contact information in the description box of this video as well. And then again, though, for those who are watching, if you or a loved one are considering senior living and need to figure out what to do with their home, let's talk. Let's schedule a free consultation with me by clicking on my Calendly link in the video description box below, or learn more about my services at www.simplifyseniortransitions.com. Or if you have a quick question, you could DM me on Instagram at soulbydale. Thanks again, Katie, for being a guest on this show.
Thanks for having me,
And
Dale. Always enjoy our conversations.
yeah, you're very welcome. And if you guys found this video helpful, this interview helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this information. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast.